Picture the last time you left your home in a hurry. Maybe you smelled smoke. Maybe an alarm went off. You didn't pack. You didn't tidy up. You grabbed what mattered and you got out. Because some part of your brain decided that staying one more minute was more dangerous than leaving everything behind. Now imagine someone walks into that home a month later. The food is still on the table. Your coat is still on its hook. Your child's toys are exactly where they were dropped. Everything is calm, untouched, ordinary. Except there is no one there, and there never will be again. That is almost exactly what a boarding party found on the morning of December 5th, 1872, in the middle of the Atlantic Ocean. A ship sailing along under partial sail, in good condition, fully stocked, cargo intact, and not a single living soul aboard. The ship was called the Mary Celeste, and you've probably heard it called proof of something supernatural, a ghost ship, an abduction, a curse. But the real answer is far stranger than a ghost story, because the truth isn't that we have no explanation, it's that we have a very good one, and it may be the most quietly terrifying explanation of all. Here's what actually happened. Here's what the evidence says, and here's why 10 people may have made a perfectly rational decision that killed every one of them. Start with the voyage. On November 7, 1872, the Mary Celeste left New York Harbor bound for Genoa, Italy. She was a two-masted brigantine, about 282 tons, commanded by Captain Benjamin Briggs, an experienced and, by every account, deeply respected mariner. This matters. Briggs was not reckless. He was known as careful, sober, and religious. He was so confident in this voyage that he brought his wife Sarah and their 2-year-old daughter Sophia along with him. 7 crewmen rounded out the ship's company, 10 souls in total. The cargo was the detail that would later explain everything. 1,701 barrels of denatured alcohol, industrial alcohol, the kind used for manufacturing, not drinking. Poisonous to consume, but valuable, and bound for Italy. The Atlantic did not cooperate. For 2 weeks, the Mary Celeste fought heavy weather and rough seas. The ship's log recorded steady progress despite the conditions, and the final entry was made at 5 in the morning on November 25th, placing the vessel near the Azores, a cluster of Portuguese islands about halfway across the ocean. And then the log went silent. 10 days later, on December 5th, a British brigantine called the Dei Gratia was crossing the same stretch of ocean, roughly 400 miles east of the Azores. Her captain, David Morehouse, spotted a ship in the distance, moving strangely, yawing, drifting, its sails set in a slightly disordered way, as if no one were steering. Morehouse recognized her. It was the Mary Celeste. And here's a detail the ghost story version usually leaves out. Morehouse knew Captain Briggs personally. The 2 men had dined together in New York before both ships departed. Morehouse knew Briggs to be a first-rate captain, which made what he was seeing impossible to understand. He sent a boarding party across. What they found has fueled a century and a half of speculation. The Mary Celeste was, in nautical terms, seaworthy. She was not sinking. The cargo of alcohol was almost entirely intact. There was 6 months of food and fresh water aboard. The crew's personal belongings, their clothes, their pipes, their sea chests were neatly stowed. Sarah Briggs's sewing was reportedly still in place. There was no sign of violence, no blood, no evidence of a struggle. No indication that anyone had left in a panic to escape an attacker. But 3 things were missing or wrong, and every serious theory hinges on them. First, the ship's single lifeboat was gone. Not smashed, not torn away, deliberately launched, apparently by the crew themselves. Second, the navigational instruments, Briggs's sextant and chronometer, and the ship's papers were missing. You don't grab your navigation tools when you're fleeing a monster. You grab them when you intend to navigate, when you plan to survive.
Third, and most revealing, one of the ship's two pumps had been disassembled, and there were several feet of water in the hold. Not a fatal amount for a ship that size, but a frightening one if you couldn't accurately measure it. Put those three clues together, and a picture starts to form. This was not a chaotic escape. It was an orderly abandonment. 10 people got calmly into a lifeboat and rowed away from a ship that was in no immediate danger of sinking. The question that has haunted this case for 150 years is simple. Why would an experienced captain do something so obviously insane? Before we get to the best answer, let's clear away the ghosts. The salvage inquiry in Gibraltar, led by an attorney general named Frederick Solly Flood, suspected foul play almost immediately. His first theory was fraud, that Morehouse and Briggs had conspired to fake an abandonment and split the insurance and salvage money. Investigators examined the ship for over 3 months. They found no evidence for it. The two captains being friends turned out to just be that, a friendship, not a conspiracy. Solly Flood also floated the idea that the Dei Gratia's crew had murdered everyone aboard to claim the salvage. Again, no blood, no weapons, no motive that survived scrutiny. The court cleared them. Then came the writers. In 1884, a young and then unknown Arthur Conan Doyle, years before Sherlock Holmes made him famous, published a short story loosely based on the case. He fictionalized nearly everything, invented survivors, a revenge plot, changed the ship's name slightly, and presented it as a first-person account. It was so vivid that people believed it. Many of the facts the public still associates with the Mary Celeste, meals still warm on the table, a cat asleep on a locker, half-drunk cups of tea, come not from the actual ship, but from that piece of fiction and the imitations it inspired. Over the decades, the legend absorbed sea monsters, giant squid, waterspouts, and eventually aliens. Strip all of that away, and you're left with the physical evidence. And the physical evidence points to something no one thought of for a long time because it required understanding the cargo. Remember those 1,701 barrels of alcohol? When the ship was finally unloaded in Genoa, 9 of the barrels were found empty. Denatured alcohol is volatile. In the heat and pressure changes of the voyage, some of those barrels almost certainly leaked, venting alcohol vapor into the hold. And here is the leading modern theory, the one favored by many researchers today. Imagine you are Captain Briggs. You hear a sound below decks, a rumble or a sudden pop as a barrel vents. You go down and you're hit by the sharp, unmistakable smell of alcohol fumes filling the enclosed hold. Perhaps you even see a brief flash or feel a wave of pressure. Every instinct screams the same word: explosion. You have your wife and your 2-year-old daughter on a wooden ship sitting on top of 1,700 barrels of what you now believe is a bomb about to go off. What do? You don't wait to be sure. You do exactly what that part of your brain did when you smelled smoke in your own home. You get everyone off immediately. The theory goes that Briggs ordered all 10 people into the lifeboat, but not to abandon ship permanently. He had them tie the lifeboat to the Mary Celeste with a rope, a long line, so they could drift a safe distance behind, wait for the fumes to clear or the vessel to explode, and then, if nothing happened, pull themselves back aboard. It was a cautious, intelligent plan. It might have worked. And this is where the quiet horror of the real story lives. The fumes cleared. The ship did not explode. But something went wrong with the rope. Perhaps it was never tied securely. Perhaps a gust of wind or a swell filled the Mary Celeste's sails, and she suddenly surged forward, snapping the line or tearing it from their hands. In an instant, the ship they had so carefully not abandoned began sailing away from them, empty, unstoppable, while 10 people sat in an open boat in the middle of the Atlantic with no mast, little water, and no way to catch her. The Mary Celeste sailed on alone for 10 days and hundreds of miles, steering herself until the Dei Gratia found her. Her crew, almost certainly, did not survive those same days. An open lifeboat in the open ocean is a death sentence. They were never found, not one of them. Notice what that means. The mystery of the Mary Celeste was never really what unknown force took the crew. There was no force. The crew made a careful, rational, even loving decision. Get the family to safety, don't take chances with an explosion, keep a line to the ship so you can return. Every step made sense, and every step led through one small failure of a knot or a rope to the deaths of all 10. That's the part worth sitting with. We tell ourselves that disaster comes from recklessness, that if we're just careful enough, sober enough, experienced enough, we'll be safe. Benjamin Briggs was all of those things. His caution is precisely what put his family in that lifeboat. The ghost story version of the Mary Celeste is frightening because it suggests some monster in the dark. The real version is far more unsettling because it suggests that sometimes the most reasonable decision available, made by the most competent person aboard, is the one that kills you, and you never even find out you were wrong. So the next time you leave somewhere in a hurry, trusting that instinct that says, "Get out now," remember the Mary Celeste. That instinct exists to save your life, and usually it does. Briggs followed it perfectly. The ship he was so afraid would destroy his family floated safely for another decade. It was the escape that killed them. And the truly haunting thing isn't that we don't know what happened aboard that ghost ship. It's that we probably do.